I'm going to call this Teaching, Learning, Equity, and Pupil Service Committee meeting to order, 5:31 p.m. Ms. Shope, could we have a roll call, please? Present.
Present.
Have a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It passes unanimously. And a motion for the approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It passes unanimously. Item 2A, 2022 summer school.
All right. So it's that time of year again. So we are bringing back the team to help put together summer school, and they're going to give us an update on this year's summer school. I'll be running the slide deck here as soon as I get it up. So we have Ms. Mortek and Ms. Elliott. I'll turn it over to them. There we go.
Thanks, Dan.
No problem.
Good evening, Teresa Moratek here with Rochelle Elliott to present for feedback tonight the summer school programming with the intent of going to the consent agenda April 19th. So just here to get some feedback from the committee. So for summer school 2022, we have 3 bucketed areas similar to last summer that we were focusing on, which is to have support and enrichment opportunities, credit recovery opportunities, and then some of those opportunity bridges. And our goals, again, similar in thinking about post-pandemic, where we are in all of that work, wanting to continue with those goals that we went into last summer. So provide quality programming that offers opportunities for prioritized standards-aligned learning along with wellness and enrichment. Our second goal was to provide opportunities for face-to-face hands-on learning. That includes student choice and high-interest activities along with flexibility and scheduling. And then our goal 3 is to provide equitable opportunity bridges that intentionally address proficiency in credit recovery and literacy in math. And some of our programming highlights is that we are at 6 sites this year, 2 elementary, 2 intermediate, and 1 high school. And then also just understanding that we'll have those different opportunities at the sites for students with specialized needs. And then also that last bullet, that 6th site is at Even Start, and that is, which will be at Brother Dutton, but that is also contingent on the funding sources and availability at BTC. And so in speaking with the executive director there, we should know whether or not they receive those rewards by that registration date. And then also in knowing that we have those A-Path opportunities, that's that academic, and then those WE-Path. Last year, just coming right off of, not knowing where we were in all of our learning, because remember we had virtual and then went to the congruent, we really wanted to provide that wellness and just getting kids active and out there and off of screens and so forth, which we did do. This year, we wanted to dig a little deeper and lean into that. So we will be inviting teachers that want to teach summer school to design some of those courses, and then with the approval moving forward so that students can students and families can register for those. Excited about that. So for example, at one of our intermediates last year, we had a sign language course that a teacher offered to do. And actually when the principal of that summer school did feedback, that was one that kids really enjoyed. So we're looking for those types of things that are really teacher generated, and there's that interest from the kids, so forth, to build into our scheduling. And then our equitable opportunity bridges, we do have our Lit Camp which is a program that we adopted through ESSER funds last summer, and that will continue. But we also want to pull kids that are potentially on that tier 2 that have also signed up for summer school to pull out and to do our ERLA, which is our embedded assessment that we already have now with our new reading materials. They can just continue that embedded explicit instruction on foundational skills. Reading fluency packets, which is repeated reading, which is a research-based strategy that you can use. We can use with our 4th and 5th graders. And then last year we had the bridges for Algebra 1. There were some excited folks about that, and they're designing an Algebra 2 bridges course. So really happy that came right out of the math department. So looking forward to that. And then again, English 9 bridge. Then we have our credit recovery learning that will be happening, and then again, a summer graduation ceremony opportunity for those students that just need to finish up those last credits and make it within that, this school year. It will still count for this school year, but they'll have a graduation ceremony in the summer.
Good evening. So summer school for elementary, intermediate, and high school will be 6 weeks, starting at June 21st to July 29th. A slight difference from last year, we did 3 2-week sessions. This time we're going to do 2 3-week sessions. That will came back from feedback from staff and families. So elementary starting at 7:45, going to 12:15 with the A path and the we path, families having an option of signing up for one or both. Last year, most, if not, I would say 99% of families stayed for the whole day of summer school. Intermediate times, 45 minutes after elementary for busing, so that's 8:30 till 1 o'clock with both of the A and we paths. Teresa talked a little bit about some of those enrichment proposals. Some of the ones that have come in this year so far have been forensic science, coding, and sports and fitness. So some of the logistics for elementary and intermediate, we'd like to start registration on or around April 20th. We will be doing the same type of busing that we did last year with corner stops, and still working with our community partners to look at collaborations after summer school is over, similar to what we did last year with the Boys and Girls Club. High school is going from 8 weeks to 6 weeks, so that is the same, June 21st to July 29th. Wanting to open that up for high school students to enroll April 26th. So that's going to be 8 until noon. Really looking at doing some majority of the in-person instruction for students, but still working with some of those hybrid and asynchronous learnings as DPI permits. And Teresa talked through the opportunity bridges in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 and having that summer graduation. We would use the same health and safety protocols that we have going on to reflect the current context and mitigation strategies. And our staff and students would use the same handbooks that they do during the school year. Looking at the budget, so last year we purchased quite a bit of materials with the Lit Camp, the Fluency Pack, STEAM materials, chapter books, and credit recovery resources. So this year we will not be spending as much on summer school, those materials, because we will still be utilizing those from last year. But we will need to make some purchases for any of the enrichment courses that are proposed. And those funding sources would be within the parameters of ESSER funding. So that is the start of our summer 2022 summer school.
And thank you both for providing that update. I also want to add on to the presentation in terms of some of the background logistical pieces that also came from feedback. So you can see a lot of similar structures that we had last year. So the familiarity will breed confidence and consistency. We did make that adjustment from 3 2-week to 2 3-week sessions and keeping it consistent across all of our levels. But we also heard loud and clear in terms of the supports needed. So in addition, we've increased the daily rate for our teachers, and we are augmenting all of our sites with student services teams so that we are working through the logistics and making sure that when our families come to summer school sites, that while it is different than their normal school year, they still have access to the same resources. So we are working through the logistics and not saying at this point that every place will have a full suite of student services, but every site will have student services staff available to that. So that will augment that support as we move forward. So with that additional information, we'll open it up to the committee for feedback that we'll take back and add to this for the 19th when we come back and ask for approval to the full board.
Board Member Schneider, do you have anything?
I know you mentioned that the materials all fit within the ESSER funds parameter. Is that what funds most of the summer school program?
Yeah, it's also title funding. So last year we used braided funds for title funding and for ESSER. But, there was a large purchase last year, for example, with our lit camp. But we collected and stored all of those materials. And the teachers did an amazing job just organizing them, keeping them nice. So we're able to really just churn those back out, and same with the manipulatives. So it's just a replenishing of things, really. And then not expecting, each of the sites usually get a little, budget. So not expecting tons of funding required, especially for those enrichment courses.
Okay.
And to add on to that, Board Member Schneider, summer school is the most nuanced of all the budgets because it crosses over 2 budget years. So we spend money at the end of our fiscal year and then at the very beginning of our fiscal year, but then we don't get reimbursed until the middle of that next fiscal year. So we actually got paid this year for half the stuff that we did last year, and then the other half, and then the beginning of this summer school will be reimbursed next year if it's on. If it weren't for ESSER, outside of title funds, it would come out of our Fund 10 balance. And so in part, we are using that opportunity to meet those needs of our students. And then we're also looking at it as an opportunity to measure that impact. As Board Member Levy mentioned at one of the other board updates, what is the ROI on that? So by adding the additional staff, adding these additional pieces, we're also looking at a year out. How did these students do over last year and this year, and what do we carry moving forward?
Good. Thank you. I really appreciate knowing that there'll be a student services team at each of the buildings as we continue to work with the students and the learning loss and emotional needs that they have. So that's great.
Thank you.
This might not be answerable now, but information to bring back for the 19th. Looking at our data, and as you're placing students at tiers or based off MAP scores or like you mentioned, their ERLA scores, what is the access? Like if students are placed in tiers, are the students who are needing additional services, are they accessing summer school over the last year or two? It's just something that I want to know. Like I said, because sometimes some students just need more time. And that's what summer school is, an extended and additional learning opportunity. But are those students who need the additional learning opportunities taking the learning opportunities? But in this last 2 years, things have, people just is different. So every opportunity might not have been utilized, but.
Yeah, Vice President Levy, I appreciate that. And I think the other thing that's exciting for us is we will be able to say, okay, these are the students that are in our Tier 2 or Tier 3. Did they choose to do summer school or not, right? Could we recommend to their parents, of course? And then also, we have already built out in our school pace dashboard with ERLA for foundational skills, a summer school piece. So we'll be able to look and see just the growth that happens over summer with the kids that also overlapped in that tier. And then it'll be interesting because I'm always just a personal interest in that concept of summer learning loss, right? And so does this benefit students just as a whole? And we can also look then at Lit Camp, which has its own white papers. It was part of why we chose that particular curriculum. It's also an embedded cell is within the Lit Camp. So they have like different themes, belonging or support or different pieces like that. And so each week they focus on a different theme that is embedded with cell. And those are the types of books and stories that they read. But we can also look at the growth of the students that participated in Lit Camp and how that shakes out with their ERLA scores come fall.
And so you mean the social emotional learning?
Yes.
Right. Because I think that's another thing to think about, for summer 2022, some of it, like, there's, at the high school, things are credit-based, but in those other grades, sometimes just continue to move people back into a position of being ready to learn. And, everything is always academic, but there's that socialization part of students being able to be with their friends, and just if we're hitting, like I said, the social emotional pieces that month often, but students are in a better place to come back to as things are, different from the last 2 years. So just understanding that intentionality in the planning and explaining some more of that too in the next presentation.
Okay, we'll make sure to do that. And I also think too, capturing the intent last summer was, our students had been on devices all year. So how can we just really limit that piece? Not that embedded technology isn't a really important, relevant tool, but the Lit Camp is actual trade books, the enrichment activities, right? Getting kids moving and exercising and all of that, or, whether they're in chess club or they're doing sign language or whatever it might be, that we're challenging some of that because in knowing what our kids have been going through, and so much of that behind the screen time. And that was really the intent and the design of the programming last summer as well.
Thank you.
One of the things that I'll share as an opportunity, because Ms. Elliott and I have been starting to do some of the staffing and looking at the principals for each of the sites. And we've been very fortunate that we have some individuals who are just receiving their admin license or have their admin license but have not had the opportunity, and being able to pair them with an administrator. So now we have, when we talk about that recruitment and retaining, how do we give individuals who want to eventually go into administration, pair them up with our administrators so that there can be a mentor-mentee opportunity during these 6 weeks. So we're looking forward to finding those quick wins through those opportunities as well.
Thank you. Now we are to item 3A, Memorandum of Understanding between the School District of Beloit and the City of Beloit for School Resource Officers Program.
Awesome. So we have our team back here, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Beavers. I just want to draw everyone's attention that the team has included the first presentation for review, as well as the second presentation as well, and then the MOU, so that you can ask questions or review. And then we also have our partners in the room so that they can answer questions as well. So Ms. Beavers.
Thank you. Good evening. So we're back here tonight to discuss the MOU for School Resource Officer Program in the School District of Beloit. We are not going to repeat our first presentation. That was for information only. Tonight we wanted to come back and address some of the questions and concerns that were brought up at committee a month ago, and then field some additional questions that you might have. So I just wanted to start by reviewing the goals of the SRO program, the mission and the goals. So the mission of our School Resource Officer Program is to improve school safety and the educational climate at the school. We work to provide safe learning environments, provide valuable resources to school staff members, foster positive relationships with students, and develop strategies to resolve problems affecting our youth with the goal of protecting all children so that they can reach their fullest potential. Just as a review, currently, we have 3 school resource officers in the school district of Beloit, 1 assigned full-time to Beloit Memorial High School, 1 assigned to the East Side Intermediates, which is Aldrich and Fruzen, and 1 assigned to the West Side Intermediate Schools, which is Cunningham and McNeil. The next slide is going into the questions and concerns that were brought up at the last committee meeting. So you'll see there the first concern was really kind of addressing the role clarity for staff members in the building regarding the administration's role and the SRO's role when responding to a student or a classroom issue that might arise. I listed the MOU language, directed your attention to the MOU language there. As it states in the MOU, it says, as to student code of conduct violations, the SRO shall refer to students to the school principal's office for discipline to be meted out by school officials. SROs shall not act as disciplinarians, as disciplining students is a school district responsibility. Now, we recognize that there's work to be done in this area. As a team, we've discussed that we've been very good at providing information to administrators on the role of the SRO in the building and the goals of the program. However, we've discussed getting in front of staff members in order to provide them with that same information on the role, the clear delineation of roles of administrator and SRO. Yeah, next slide. The next question was, can the city staff the request for an additional float SRO? Again, I'll direct you to the MOU language that we revised, which states the city shall employ 3 SROs during the term of this agreement with the ability to add additional full-time positions as agreed upon by both parties. Additional SRO-trained police officers may be added to an SRO cadre to help supplement the school district should there be a foreseen need for additional resources within a school building or to provide oversight at school athletics and special events where an SRO-trained officer is preferred. We didn't want to overpromise something that we couldn't fulfill by putting a firm 4 in there. We thought this was a good compromise because we are addressing the needs or the concerns that came out of the focus groups. One being, can we get SROs in our elementary buildings to start building those relationships younger? And the second concern that came out was the SROs at the intermediate level who are split between buildings oftentimes will get called to their sister building, leaving their assigned building of that day without an SRO. So this float would help with that concern. The next question that came about from committee was what evaluation of the SRO program is done in between MOU renewals? For example, how does the district determine if the goals of the program are met? And how is feedback given to the Beloit Police Department? We added, this would be recommended new language in the MOU. In order to consistently evaluate the program and proactively maintain the safety and security of the district and community at large, the parties will collaborate on a quarterly basis to discuss the growth of the program and evaluate program goals. So the current MOU language does not, it doesn't have language regarding evaluation of the program. So it was essentially done by the police department or by the school district in silos. We did not collaborate on evaluation of the program. So like I said, we're recommending regular collaborative meetings to keep a pulse, to get feedback on the program in order to be proactive in supporting our staff and students and families. The last question that came from committee was, can the city help in supporting the MOU cost with the district? Again, directing you to the MOU language, should an SRO need to exceed 8 hours in any workday due to an extended call for service, investigation, or report writing, such overtime must be approved by the SRO supervisor and paid for by the city according to the city's overtime procedures. This is one area that the city takes the responsibility of cost. Additionally, we have struck From the MOU, the district's responsibility to cover the cost of the NASRO School Resource Officer course that is required to become an SRO. That's a 40-hour block of instruction designated for law enforcement officers working in an educational environment and with school administrators. It provides those tools for building positive relationships with both students and staff. So the city will be taking on the cost of that course for SROs. And then we've also discussed any recommended additional trainings. There would be a collaboration between the district and the city to determine if we are going to share the cost. If the city finds that it's a valuable tool, we can have that conversation over are we gonna split the cost? Is the district gonna pay for it, or is the city willing to pay for it? So there are a couple opportunities there. Those are the questions and concerns we brought back from last month's committee, so we're willing to take any more questions or concerns.
Board Member Schneider, do you have any questions?
Not at this time.
Thank you for receiving the feedback and then going back. I have a couple that I'll come up with. I think that, as described in our last meeting, understanding the history of Beloit School Resource Officer Program, I think it has been a benefit to our school. And we've also received feedback from the community and other people. Whereas, what makes people feel safe in school? People do feel safe. People do appreciate the partnership between our school district and our school resource officers. Kind of going back into the history of what is happening in school safety in Beloit. Remember when Doug Reynolds was here and we had our, we were kind of on the leading edge of safety back in those days and increasing and adding things. Also, this is some of the unwritten history that, to the point that even many of our school safety and security officers were actually retired Beloit police officers. So that space there, and when I was at Beloit Memorial from 2006 to 2009, I walked with Marty Farr, and like Marty said, hey, I need some compliant people. So walking with Marty Farr and have that. It's everybody. If you know MF, it's that Marty's something else. But the point being is that in that space of also being a professional educator, having worked in Columbus, Ohio, the Central High School District of West Tosha, and here in Beloit, some of my issues as a board member were not so much the role of what our police department has done, but the way that we ourselves have conducted the program in the district. There's lots of things that come up, and as an administrator, sometimes your judgments and decisions are always being second-guessed. And frankly, to talk about, in some of our most recent history in Beloit, you go back to our teacher town hall meeting, that as a parent and an African-American parent and a professional, I understand sometimes student misbehavior is the worst part of a public education job, but there's going to be days we're human beings in a building and there's going to be conflict. But I think that something that people can't miss, because when we're talking about our SROs, that's usually coming up in a disciplinary situation or conduct that's misconduct that's not really what we think of our purpose for schools. But I think that some of the things that were happening in the community is concerns that when we look at our discipline in Beloit, and there's a role for disproportionality, but there's also the space of, no, this is John, and John did these 6 things. That's why the data is what it is. But that was one of those spaces of concerns of people not wanting the police function, the school resource officer function, to be to be crowding out and encroaching in what should really be a school disciplinary situation. So that was those are the genesis of some of the questions. Dr. Kieser is new, and last year there were not, we had limited student interactions in buildings because of the pandemic, and our role as board members, as we have taken up expulsion hearings, we are able to hear some of the extreme conduct that happens as students are reported. But those are things that in years prior were being heard by lawyers. And even as we work with Mr. Ulrich and some of the recommendations that come to administration, it gives us a vision of some of the things that are happening. So that's the context in which a lot of the questions and procedures are coming about. I think that, you know, even in our community, when we look at some of the feedback that's come, no one said we didn't want our police officers or value the work that our police officers are doing, but it's in that scope of trying to understand what are our approaches and practices as a district. So like I said, there's clarity. I did read the second, or the rewrite, and like I said, that language clarity is there about student code of conduct and where they're at, but that's part of the training, and even in these questions and concerns, that's the space. And like I said, there's so much in getting up to a regular school year, but like you said, that our staff has that training and understand that our officers are working with our administrators in handling certain issues, but the school resource officer is not a disciplinarian. And then like I said, and it's not even an avenue to circumvent, I don't like this decision my administrator made. And no one's trying to squash anything, but that's for students the orderly running of the building, and just our understanding together that that's something that needed to be addressed. The request for additional officers, I think one of the things that there's always budget constraints, but in reading the MOU and understanding that our intermediate students are flipping, their officers are flipping, and then sometimes the needs or the situation of the day might actually call them away from that building. I think that's another space where, if we had the money and it's the value we believe, then we'd like officer at each school maybe. So there's a space there, but I do appreciate the language that, if those conversations are had, they can be had, and the city and the school district can address those. There, the evaluation of the program, that was another concern. And it's something, like I said, because of the relationship of the district and the city and the police department, that the MOU has existed and things have been changed. But like I said, that evaluation, when I worked in Columbus City Schools, we would start the school year at the high school level, 18 high schools, assistant principals, and the police officer that was assigned to that building. And we have conversations about our district's code of conduct and how things will be handled, scenarios, and walk through. For myself as a professional administrator, there are definitely times in which, like I said, in my practice, there are days when it's school, you're watching kids, laughing with kids, interacting with kids, watching basketball games, football games, but then every now and then, there are those emergency situations, and police officers have to do like real police work, and administrators got to do some real work where judgment, the real hard work, where your judgments and decision-making are called into question. But understanding that, like I said, we have a new superintendent now, and whatever the practice was is whatever the practice was. Not so much of a gotcha, but to understand what type of evaluation is really happening. We also have a new chief too. So it's like, what evaluation of the program is happening? Is there that opportunity for the district and the city not to just, go through the motions, but to actually sit down and talk about the incidents and the things that we're seeing? So I appreciate the addition of the quarterly evaluations to have those conversations about, the work. Because also, too, reading through the MOU, there's a number of other things that should happen, trainings, and, to me, I'm satisfied that they're written there, but now it's about the live document and the practice that goes forth in our work and collaboration together to make sure we're providing the safest environment that we can for students. And then also another area, we've got ARPA, the city's got ARPA funds, we've got ESSER funds, there's all this money for pandemic responses and other things that, elected leaders have to talk about how we're using our resources to serve our students. And that's a conversation that this board is looking forward to having with the city council, so that, you know, however all these funds are here, that we're able to do something that benefits our students. So I appreciate that language, and I would assume that in that last one, that the city was, before the school district, was the school district paying the overtime for the report writing and things, or?
No, they weren't paying for the overtime, we were paying for the NASRO course.
Okay, so there's some help,
Yep.
because we've got a budget situation. So, but like, those are conversations that'll be forthcoming. So I do appreciate the work that was done to address those questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I greatly appreciate the cooperation and the willingness to work together between the school district and the police department to improve the MRO for the SROs in the building. Most of my time when I was at the high school, Sergeant Linders was the SRO that was there. And I got to know her fairly well. And knowing that as she continues to supervise the program, that the SRO program will only get stronger and better in the future. So I greatly appreciate her leadership and that of Chief Stiles for the program. Thank you.
All right, so that's it for us. I think we're at the part, this is an action item. So this is our second time hearing it. It'll go to the full board. It will hit the consent agenda. And at that time, there might be the opportunity for the full board to have discussion or talk. So I'm looking for a recommendation or a motion.
I move that we send the MOU to the full board for consideration.
Second. It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. So this will be moving to our consent agenda for our 7 o'clock business meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next meeting date will be April 19th, 2022, 5:30 p.m. For a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimous. I'm going to call this March 15th, 2022 Human Resource Committee meeting to order at 6:31 PM. Mrs. Shope, could I have a roll call, please?
Anderson,
Present.
Amy Levy,
Here.
Sean Levy,
Present.
Miller, Schneider,
Present.
Ruff, Sumrow.
Present.
I have Miller and Ruff absent.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion for the approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. The agenda is approved. Is there a motion for the approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. It's unanimous. You have discussion. Board Member Levy, is there discussion?
No, I was just pointing out to call for discussion in case there is.
Thank you, Board Member Levy.
You're very welcome.
We're on to number 2, employment recommendations. Is there a need for us to go into closed session? Anyone? Okay. So we'll go to 2B, HR Committee Report, Employment Recommendations, Exhibit A and B. Is there a motion?
I actually have a couple questions.
Okay.
Okay. The first is for Exhibit B. The intermediate wrestling coach at Fruzen is listed as $3,036 with 3 years experience. But if we look on the matrix, for an intermediate wrestling coach, it should be $1,608. For a high school assistant wrestling coach, that's the $3,036.
With 3 years. Yes. I will have to check with Joel on that one.
I also have a question.
Oh, what was it?
If you're,
No, just a couple more. Just wondering with the mentors, why mentors are being assigned so late in the year. If you could maybe give us some information on the process. Are mentors assigned to like first or second year teachers? Is it as the need arises? How are those assignments made?
So mentors are assigned when we have new teachers, and they are assigned for multiple years. So we assign them and then give them time to work with them across multiple years here.
So is there a reason mentors are being assigned so late in the school year?
Simply because we're hiring new staff this late in the school year.
Okay, thank you. And then my final question is actually for Exhibit A1, the interview panel. Actually, 2 questions. The first is, who supervises substitute teachers?
They are hired at the district level, so it's the HR team that's working down in the HR office who are reviewing the applications and having basically phone interviews and then signing them up. So they go through the hiring process so that we can get them into our system.
Okay, and then my final question, is there a reason why the hiring admin is not participating in the interview to hire the individual? Is that the standard procedure?
It has been our standard practice that because we're looking for substitutes, when they apply, we go through we go through basically a phone interview and looking at their background credentials, and then look to get them on board, go through the background checks and all of that, and get them hired. So,
So,
yep.
oh, go ahead. So, for example, you are the hiring admin / supervisor, but looking at the demographic of the interview panel, I'm assuming that was not you that interviewed them. So, I guess my question is it standard for someone to interview a sub and just send you like a notice and say, yes, I recommend you hire this person, and then you approve it? Is that how that works?
With the substitutes, yes, it has been.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a quick question. It says that the intermediate wrestling coach is at Beloit Memorial High School. Is that a mistake, or is that, my vision?
The location is incorrect.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
I'll follow up on that one too.
Any more questions? Okay, is there a motion?
I move approval of employee recommendations for March 15th, Exhibit A and B, with the modifications discussed.
Second?
It's been moved and properly second. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, it's unanimous and passes. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, April 5th, 2022 at 6:30 PM. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and properly second. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Unanimous. We're adjourned.
Thank you all so much for coming. It's great to see everybody in here tonight. We'll get started at around 7. Thank you so much. All right. Oh, that's okay. Hi, good evening. It is 7 p.m., Tuesday, March 15th, and this time we'd like to call the board business meeting to order. The Board of Education would like to let our families and viewers know that our regular board meetings are being simultaneously interpreted. You can watch the Spanish interpreted meeting through the link found at the board website under the Watch Meetings tab with tonight's date. In order to accommodate this interpretation, we will be monitoring the pace of our meeting to allow time for the interpretation, and I would like to remind our board members and others speaking to please speak one at a time. Thank you so much for your consideration and understanding. It's also wonderful to see everybody here this evening. At this time, may we please have a roll call for attendance?
Anderson,
Present.
Amy Levy,
Here.
Sean Levy,
Present.
Miller,
Present?
Schneider,
Present.
Ruff, Sumrall.
Present.
All right, thank you very much. At this time, we are on item 1D, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'm going to ask Board Member Schneider to leave his mic on for those watching at home. And if everybody else could please rise, we'll do the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. That takes us to item 2, which is public comment time. We did have a board listening session on Sunday, but since only a few people were able to attend and anticipating a popular public comment time tonight, I'd like to take a quick moment to read through the pieces that we read through on Sunday so that we can all be grounded in the same information, and then we'll officially begin our public comment time. As part of the norms for this meeting, before we get started, we would like to ground the discussion by providing a brief overview of the high-interest issues that were advertised. Beginning with the SRO contract. First, we would like to address a misunderstanding that seems to have been circulating around the community. Never at any point has this Board of Education ever entertained or participated in a discussion about eliminating school resource officers. To be clear, we are not eliminating SROs, and no one has ever discussed at the board level eliminating SROs. It is our practice that the board approves any contract over $100,000. Since the SRO contract with the city has historically been more than $250,000, we are moving through the usual process of approving the Memorandum of Understanding, or the MOU. The most recent draft of the new MOU is posted on board docs and is publicly available. The board appreciates our SROs and what they contribute to school safety for students and staff. We appreciate Dr. Kieser thanking our officers present at the tragic shooting at the high school parking lot on behalf of the district the night of the incident. Our current draft is publicly posted on the board agenda and board docs for the meeting, which is, of course, tonight, Tuesday, March 15th. The second item is regarding the decision about masking in school. The board asked Dr. Kieser to present his reopening plan last summer. He brought us his reopening plan, which included a process for how mitigation practices would be determined. The board approved this plan on July 6, 2021. Dr. Kieser will this evening present his mask decision, and since we already approved his plan, the mask decision is not something the board necessarily has to vote on. Dr. Kieser reminded us at our last meeting that he uses data from the CDC, DHS, and also takes vaccination rates into consideration. Lastly, the board is discussing, although not tonight's meeting, necessarily whether to consider a future referendum. No decisions have been made at this time other than to explore the options. For the past 2 years, the district has maintained a mill rate of $10.10. To be clear, the board has not raised taxes, which is a common misconception we've heard in our community. There are 4 possible outcomes of this discussion. The first being no referendum at all. The second being a capital referendum, meaning that we would ask for money to improve facilities. Another option could be a mix of a capital referendum and an operational referendum, meaning that we could we would ask for money for facilities and for services related directly to teaching children and running the district. Okay. Thanks. And D, an operational referendum, meaning that we would be asking for money for services directly relating to teaching children and running the district. Thank you all for coming. So before we continue any further, I was so excited to hear from everybody that I skipped item 1C, which is to approve the agenda. So would anybody like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion by Semrau, second by Schneider. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Excellent. So that then takes us to the remainder of item 2A, which is just to establish our norms, and then we'll start calling folks up. So members of the public are welcome to attend all open meetings of the Board of Education. Robert's Rules of Order will be followed at all times. Individuals attending board meetings are expected to conduct themselves in a respectful and courteous manner that models appropriate behavior for our students. Individuals wishing to comment are expected to comply with the following norms in order to maintain a respectful and orderly meeting and to prevent discussion of confidential matters in a public forum. Comments should be directed to members of the Board of Education and not district employees, students, or other members of the public in attendance at the meeting. Speech that is belligerent, disorderly, disruptive, repetitive, or which exceeds the allowable time permitted for each speaker is prohibited. Concerns or questions that entail the disclosure of identifying information regarding specific students are prohibited. Response from the board, if any, will be limited to clarifying inaccurate information, seeking additional information from the speaker, or acknowledging that the speaker has been understood. The board will not debate with an individual, and the board may not take action on an item raised during public comment that is not on the meeting notice or agenda. The chair will interrupt and rule an individual who violates any of these norms out of order. If ruled out of order by the chair, the individual's opportunity to address the board will end immediately and the microphone will be turned off. Thank you for your participation and your courtesy. All right, it's my understanding that we have a number of public comments this evening. Ms. Shope, do you want to call up our first speaker, please?
Sure. I have two completed cards at this point. Our first speaker would be Olivia Cronin. And she might be coming from the other room.
Oh, that's fine. Take your time. We'll wait for Ms. Cronin.
Do I have to give my name and address? Or do you already have it?
Go right ahead. That's fine.
All right, I'm Olivia Cronin, 1719 Emerson Street. I'm a Belate Memorial student. Tonight I'm speaking on behalf of myself and Isabel Churchill, who cannot be with us tonight. And we think it's incredibly important that Officer Halverson gets recognized in our city and school district. He goes above and beyond for all of us students and seems to go unrecognized by the authorities. He buys snacks with his own money weekly to give to anyone that comes to his office. He randomly checks on us just to see how we're doing, and he cares about us like we're his own children. The night of the shooting, he ran into the parking lot while hundreds of students were running away from it, leaving his wife and children inside. He's the most selfless person I know, always putting the safety of students before his own. He's become a father figure for so many, and we are greatly lucky to have him. He has shown his support at multiple extracurricular events and activities, both on and off duty, for each and every one of us. Even when he seems to go unnoticed by the city and district, he will always be recognized and appreciated by his students. And as far as the question as to whether or not SROs are necessary in the building, I think it's important to look at the declining enrollment numbers in the district and understand that there's a large number of students like myself who would not feel safe in our buildings without an officer present. Thank you, Officer Halverson, for everything you do, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your comments. All right, thank you. Do we have another comment for tonight?
Yes, the next one I have is Pam Charles.
All right, thank you. Come on up, please.
And I did receive a couple of emails in our public comment email waiving their 3 minutes to Ms. Charles.
Perfect, thank you. So, 9. To 9. Okay, perfect, thank you.
I heard your opening comments actually from the meeting on Sunday. And I thought I might be able to help you understand why the public saw this SRO and continues to see it as an attempt to get rid of the SROs out of our school. Why they saw this whole process as that. When you brought this for discussion January 4th, it was actually not even on the agenda, I don't believe, but it was about community listening sessions. And Megan, you kept saying the SRO MOU would be a hot topic. And I'm thinking, okay, the public doesn't even know what an MOU is. So how could that be a hot topic? What's the hot topic is the SROs and whether or not we keep them in our schools. It wasn't about the MOU. And Mr. Levy frequently said during the meeting, well, it's just about the SROs, or, let's talk about the process of, are we going to have listening sessions, or are we going to add comments to our committee meetings, which was a good thing to talk about. This shouldn't have been about the SRO MOU. No, it would have been nice. People would have appreciated if the board would have just said, we want to hear about your feelings on SROs in our schools. And the next thing that happened was administrators held meetings and went out into buildings, met with students, other administrators, teachers, and they talked about SROs, not the MOU. The MOU wasn't even made a public document for us to see until I requested it yesterday. So this was not about the MOU. So anyway, then kids get asked, how do you feel about SROs, the administration, the teachers, and they got nothing but support for the program. So then it makes someone wonder, okay, why did this ever happen? And someone shared with me some quotes from the Daily News. 2020, the board president expressed interest in the possibility, since 2020, the board president has expressed interest in the possibility of eliminating our SRO program. On December 30th, she told the Belate Daily News that she was undecided at the moment as to whether SROs should continue in their role. Ms. Miller is an organizer of the group called SURJ, Standing Up for Racial Justice, whose platform for schools, according to interviews with the Daily News on July 9th, 2020, was to examine and plan to remove school resource officers. People read these things and they don't have a short memory when something this serious comes up in the Daily News. June 30th, the BDN article, there was a comment made by Megan Miller regarding the SURJ group to look at school resource officers. Okay? When there is a board, when the board president has an agenda like this, and then the MOU comes up, and you can either just renew it like we always have in the past, maybe have a meeting with the police chief, just have a look at it, see if anything needs updating, and then you sign it for the next 4 years. This board didn't do that. This board made a big deal out of it. And when you have an agenda like that to get rid of SROs, of course the public is going to say they're trying to get rid of SROs. Look at what happened with the expulsion hearing process. When the renewal for the contract came up, we got pretty shocked when we found out that it wasn't going to be renewed and there was not going to be a hearing expulsion officer anymore. So, these contracts should not be a way to make major changes for our schools and our students and our staff. These contracts should be, a time when you can, if you want to evaluate it, let it be known your true intention. We want to evaluate it. We might be getting rid of SROs. And then let people come and talk to you about it. Let yourself be open to representing the people instead of personal agendas. That's what I'm asking tonight. And then you wouldn't have these, quote, misunderstandings that really weren't a misunderstanding at all. It was the public being very perceptive as to what was going on. So now this is on the consent agenda, which I find very interesting. Something this important that you had to spend all these staff hours and have all these meetings about is on the consent agenda. Consent agenda is for, mundane things, meeting minutes to be approved and that sort of thing. It's not for something this important that you had to spend all this time in listening sessions on it. So hopefully you take that off tonight, because I see you have a lot of police officers here that are probably going to be speaking about that. I I'm very sad that Officer Halverson wasn't recognized by this board. We recognize people for donating backpacks. Why wouldn't we recognize a man who ran out into a situation where bullets were flying to save our children? That's a hero, and he may not want to be called a hero, and I'll bet you anything he doesn't want to be, because no one wants to be called that. But he knows he is one in his heart, and we all know he is one here. And to have this board not recognize him is shameful. That's all I can say. Same thing with Mr. Vogel. Where was the board when he got a building named after him? On a summer night last year, the swim building was named after this man that gave 30 years of his life to us. Not one board member, not one note from a board member. This is unacceptable. That's all I can say. And then my last comments are about Even Start. Please, the understaffing continues at Even Start every day. The 3-year-olds are placed in 4K classrooms, second semester 4K classrooms. That's not even legal. This is a safety concern. It's unfair to children. It's disruptive to their learning process, and it's unfair to staff. I don't know how many meetings we have to have where people come and beg for fairness at Even Start. Fairness for the families, fairness for the staff, and especially fairness for these students. And you know that's a wonderful program. We are ruining it by understaffing it. And this is an equity issue, okay? The board likes to talk about equity. Let's admit this is an equity issue, and let's get substitutes in there tomorrow, because we need them there. This isn't something that can continue to be ignored. I'm telling you, the people are not going to stand by and watch this be ignored. Okay? And we have a room full of students here and only one student spoke, but I think we all could give a big round of applause to Officer Halverson, who's standing back here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your comments. Do we have another speaker this evening?
Actually, somebody just found these in the box out in the hall. The kids didn't know to bring them in and give them to me, so I do have just a few more.
Perfect. No, come on.
And then I do have an email too. So I have Mason Hosey. Oh, is he in this room? She's next door. Or she's next door, sorry. Mason.
Should already be on for you.
My name is Mason Hosey, 1650 Morgan Terrace. I came here today to talk about the impact Halverson has had on me. Not only does he make me feel safe, but he is one of the few adults I can talk to at school. My friends and I have such a good connection with him, and he makes us all feel safe. When I'm having a bad day, he's one of the few people that can calm me down and put a smile on my face. I am thankful to have someone like him at school. Thank you, Halverson, for everything you do.
Thank you so much for your comments. Who's our next speaker?
Brianna Ramirez. Okay.
Brianna Ramirez, 1693 Morse Avenue. I'm here today on behalf of Halverson for one of many of his heroic events that he did for us. He did run out one night for the night of the shooting and put others before himself, I'm sorry. And Halverson has had a really big impact on me, not just for school, but outside of school as well. He's always just been a big father figure in my life and has really just played a big role for me. And when I'm sad, I know I can go to Halverson and he will cheer me up. If I'm hungry in class, I know to go get some chips or anything. Halverson just really is just a big, lovable, appreciated man in the Belate School District, in and out of the building. And I just wanted him to be recognized and for him to know that he is truly loved in our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Whoever would like to comment next, please.
I have Mandolin and I'm sorry if I mispronounced the last name, it looks like Fravius.
Hi, I'm Mandolyn Franks, 6230 South Edgewater Drive, Beloit, Wisconsin. And I know that, like we've talked about, especially after the shooting at the high school, there's no intention in eliminating SROs from the district. However, once the memory of that tragic event fades, I don't want this to come up again, especially with having an SRO like Officer Halverson in our school. As a senior, I'm leaving Beloit Memorial after this, and it'll be easy for me to say that it won't affect me anymore. Whatever happens after I'm gone is fine, but I don't think it'll be fair to the students younger than me to not be able to experience and have a connection with somebody like Officer Halverson. For me personally, and my best friend Isabel, we go into his office whenever we're upset or we're hungry, in passing time, we peep our head in just to say hi. He always has kind things to say, funny things to cheer us up, and I just really appreciate that. And it's hard in high school, especially going to a school like Beloit Memorial. There's a lot of negative things people think about what goes on inside Beloit, and we all experience that. People have negative thoughts about us personally, our school, our community, and I think it's just very important that we keep the positive things that we have in place, because there's not an overload of positivity going on in our community, and at times it does get very scary and very sad. Not too long ago, we were just saying goodbye to one of our friends, our classmates, our peers, who was killed in our parking lot, which is a horrific event. And luckily for us, we had an officer there who went to save other people's lives. And I was just in awe of his courage and what he did for us. I mean, that just goes to show how much he truly cares about us. None of it is fake from him. And so it was a little unfortunate that we never saw him be recognized. But I think and I hope that he knows that we all appreciate him very much, and he means the world to all of us. Officer Halverson has made Beloit Memorial a safe and welcoming place, and I don't think Beloit Memorial would be the same without him. That's all.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Is there another comment here? Great.
Yes. The next one is Leah Halverson.
Leah Halverson, I'm asking that my address, for safety concerns, obviously. Okay, you guys have it. Looking at you guys, I didn't see any of your faces the night at the basketball game. Looking out here, there is so many students that were there that I saw personally. I was at the game because students invited us, because that's what these kids do. They invite community members that they actually have a relationship with, a positive relationship with, and that's why my son and I happened to be at that game. We have been to numerous plays and sporting events, on duty, off duty. When the kids have asked us to be there, we have been there. After the shooting, when we were getting to the car, we weren't even able to get to the car because it was part of the crime scene. And we had been there for some time, and again, not a single face of yours was present during that. And that was an hour and a half after. So it's kind of disappointing as a community member and as a parent in this district and a past staff member that it has seemed to have been played off as it wasn't a school shooting because it happened in the parking lot. That it was an adult, but it was a past student. It was a student that I actually know personally, and many of these kids know personally. And it just seemed like you guys kind of seemed to brush it off a little bit. And these kids deserve a lot more than that. They deserve so much more than you guys have given them. There was resources there Monday for kids to talk to. There was so many resources for other kids that were there and intermediate schools that was not provided. You guys did not do an accurate job at making sure those kids had the resources that they needed. Being contacted by outside sources and therapists to connect with kids, that should have come from you guys. And that's disappointing as a parent and as a community member. There has been no thanks from any of you until recently, and this happened over a month ago. And honestly, I know all 3 of our SROs personally very well. I've seen them interact with students, and probably speaking for my husband here, we don't want a thanks from you guys, because we know that what we do has impacted these students more than what you guys decide at these meetings, because we are in the thick of it with them.
Thank you very much for speaking. Thank you. Is there another in-person comment?
Yes, David Ramirez.
Hello, everybody. David Ramirez, 2112 Roosevelt Avenue in the beautiful city of Beloit, Wisconsin. It's crazy. When I was little, when I was young, I used to rub against the badge, and it was not a good relationship that I had with y'all. To be able to see something like this happen in high school, and for you guys to miss the opportunity to be able to congratulate somebody that did a great job that night, man, our community engagement sucks. And I've been saying this a while now. These are the little things that you guys should be able to grab onto and be able to do something with. And it's so sad that you guys still can't do that stuff. This room is so blank. We've been trying to get art in here from you guys, from the students in our district, because you guys have so much talent. It would be beautiful to have all this artwork in this room. We've been asking for this for years, literally years. And we've been told so many different ways, yes, but until right now, y'all haven't done anything. A program for the Hispanic community where the parents learn with the children and we're able to break down barriers that my community has. Instead of you guys staffing it correctly, you guys ain't even getting in touch with the people that are directing the program to tell them we're gonna do something about it. It's leaving, man. I haven't said anything. Equity, diversity. If this doesn't fall on your lap, I don't know who else is gonna fall on. And I haven't said nothing. But we gotta start taking accountability. And I'm here to tell you that I can't tell you too much, but the Hispanic community is talking to people already for different opportunities and whole different other systems, because you guys are lacking so bad. I'm getting tired, and I see how tired people before me were and are still. I try to spark a conversation about change and hope, and I get shut down because they try to do what I'm trying to talk about, and they were shut down before I did. And I'm being shut down the same way, and people were coming to me with ideas, and it's like, man, I've been already in those shoes, just like the person before me, and a lot of this stuff that's so simple still doesn't get done. This is sad. I appreciate you guys. Thank you. My whole life, gangbagging and drug dealing. That's my lifestyle. That's what I chose. I did time, probation, and parole since I was 12. I'm 37. I've been off for a couple years now, and man, I've been doing the best I've ever done. And it's because sometimes we don't want to listen to people like y'all because of the uniform and the badge. But I've had plenty of you guys that use that badge when I was young try to talk to me, and some of those words did stick to me. And a lot of the change that is in my life right now, it comes because of people like y'all. So when people don't say thank you, when people act like they don't care or they don't see y'all, I appreciate you guys acknowledging the kids' basketball games where they just won championship in the whole state. For you guys to be able to communicate like that with the community, that's the community engagement part that I've been talking about this whole time. It doesn't take nothing but a single post. It was beautiful. It was from the heart, and it was true. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have another in-person comment? Okay. Before we go to email, would anybody else who's here present like to speak? Go ahead. If you want to just say your name and address so Ms. Shope can get it in there. Oh, honey, if you want to, yeah, so that way everybody can hear you at home too.
Corian Johnson, 1668 Avenue. I would just like to speak on the SRO thing. I have known Officer Halverson since before 3rd grade, and he's always made it easy to talk to him about anything. Recently, I've dealt with injury, death in family, and everything, and he's always been there for me, able to talk to him. And I honestly think that we should always keep someone like him and the rest of our officers in the building. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Would anybody else present like to speak? Does anybody want to check? I think there's folks in the other room too. Thank you. All right, thank you very much. Do we have an email or emails to read as well? Just one. All right, thank you.
This email is from Tasha Bell, parent. I am writing this letter as a distraught parent. My child is a 4th grade student at Cunningham. His teacher read the book. Sorry, this cuts off a little bit. I have to get it lined up. Read the book Jackie and Me by Dan Gutman aloud to his class. This book is full of derogatory terms, full of them. Words so disgusting that when you hear them, you will wonder what made a teacher choose this book. This book is not a required text. This book is something the teacher chose to read. It is my request that the person reading this during the board meeting says all of the nasty words that are here. Do not edit nor censor yourself because the teacher did not. In fact, the teacher said that the words were once acceptable, but they are no longer acceptable. These words were never acceptable under any circumstances. If the person reading this is uncomfortable reading these vile words aloud, please explain to me how a teacher was able to read this book aloud and return to the classroom. These words should not have been read aloud to 4th grade students at all. These words did not add to value to the lesson about the great Jackie Robinson. What these words did is inflict trauma on all of the students that were forced to listen to this book under the guise of education. This book introduced 9 and 10-year-olds to words they probably have never heard before. Quotes from the book include, "Hey, I ain't playing with no nigger," one of the kids said. "Go back to Harlem, Jungle Bunny," one of the kids said. "They're waiting for you in the jungles, black boy." "Hey, Snowflake, want some watermelon? We don't want you here." "We don't want you here, Brownie." "Stanky's a nigger lover," one of the fillies shouted. This book is fictional. This book is a fictional book that is supposed to teach about Jackie Robinson. Why was this book chosen? Why was the teacher allowed to return to the classroom the following day after this was discovered? Is this district committed to being an anti-racist organization, as it says so prominently on its website? In my experience since last Thursday, I will say loudly that this is far from the truth. In fact, this district is upholding the very systemic and institutional racism it claims to stand against. The children in this 4th grade class deserve better. The school district of Beloit deserves better than a teacher that is comfortable spewing hate in a 4th grade classroom. In a 1975 keynote address at Portland State University, Toni Morrison stated, "The very serious function of racism is a distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being. The administration has been distracted." Thank you, Tasha Bell, mother of a 4th grade student at Cunningham.
Thank you. Just to quickly clarify, we wanted to point out that this is not language that the board uses. We did reach out to the author of the commenter to ask if we could substitute offensive language for the reading, and she felt strongly that we should not change the language and include the original language. I will end on a positive note, unless anybody else needs anything to clarify, that we definitely very much appreciate our police officers, our student resource officers, and I think this evening's comments were a beautiful compliment and testament to the value and service that you provide to our district. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have anything to clarify at this time? Okay. Were there any other before we conclude public comment, does anybody else have anything that they would like to share? Okay. So that concludes item 2A and then takes us to item 3A, which is our student board member report. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Karina Gonzalez, and I'm here to present today's student report, which is just a quick summary of everything going on at Beloit Memorial. We have a couple of exciting highlights this month. Academic Decathlon is going to nationals. The jazz band is going to essentially Ellington in New York. And the next performances for Spring Musical Sister Act are this week, and I really recommend you go watch it. We also had our winter formal dance on March 5th, and I heard it was a great success and very fun. And the winter sports teams had a great season, and one thing obviously as we're getting closer to the end of the year, students are excited for the upcoming spring sports, and it's very exciting to see all the involvement and achievements in our school. However, many students are still concerned about safety issues regarding fights, threats, and shootings. What happened last month, it left all of us with a daily reminder that tomorrow isn't promised to us, and for it to happen in a place where we're supposed to be safe is even scarier. So teachers and students have suggested having metal detectors at the main entrances and more, and to keep the security personnel to make students feel safer about where they attend school. I've also heard varying views about the new mask policy, from wondering how it will affect the district to feeling excited to have some sort of normalcy if cases continue to fall and no new variants arise, although it's still unpredictable. But yeah, mostly we're just excited for our last term and for some our last year of high school. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for your report, Ms. Gonzalez. We appreciate it. All right, that takes us to item, oh, actually, I'm so sorry. Did any board members have questions for a student board member? Awesome. All right, thank you. So that takes us to item 3B, which is our superintendent board report.
Thank you, Board President Miller. So, continuing with the conversation, I've split my superintendent's board update into two parts. As mentioned, there will be an agenda item later on that talks about the CDC updated guidance, so that will not be included in this part of the report, but I'll come back to that at that time. So this will really be, again, a summary of where we are in the budgeting process. As you know, we've been in the process of establishing new practices and approaches to addressing our budget and making sure that we are being fiscally responsible as we have demonstrated in the past. However, $10 million is still $10 million, and we need to make sure that we are looking at all of our financial resources and expenditures and ensuring that we are being managing those taxpayer funds well. So as we had talked about, we are looking at those first two boxes in short term and moderate term. As you've heard in subsequent committee meetings and things that have started to roll up to the full board, we are constantly looking at that middle box and looking at all of our annual costs, utilities, benefit options, contracted services, and including looking at alternative forms of transportation. Those will take a little bit longer and will come more piecemeal throughout the process, but it is intended to not be a direct savings now, but really looking at how those savings could be realized moving forward into the next fiscal cycle. As we are moving into our staffing season right now, we have been looking at our allocations to our buildings and our departments and feel that we can realize about $1 million in savings there. And new, because this will come out of our normal budget conversation in October, but bringing this forward. I've been in conversations with Tim Vedra and the BEA about cost of living and feel confident that we will present proposal to the business committee on April 5th and walk through that new established process of working through the committee up through the board, making recommendations. We feel that we can put together a proposal that will still provide a bit of a increase while still overall adjusting or not allowing that increase in deficit to go by $2.5 million, but be reduced by about $1 million to $1.5 million. So while this is not a direct one-on-one savings in expenditures, by limiting the increase in the deficit from one fiscal year to another does provide a savings in that we don't have such a wide gap to navigate. As I've mentioned in the past, we have about 45 open positions that are across our district. Some of those positions have been open for over a year or longer. We feel that in reviewing those with building principals and departments, we can save roughly around 10 FTE in budget expenditures by closing some of those open positions, pushing pause, and holding those in reserve. But going through our staffing, we are in that process right now. We started staffing meetings with each individual building last week, and so we feel that through that process, we will save about 35 FTE in that. Looking at our employee handbook, we always go following the process of attrition, so we are always looking at positions of retirements and seeing when we have a position that becomes open and vacant, is that a position that necessarily needs to be filled, or is that something that can be paused? In total, if we are able to cut that budget deficit in half over this year and then look towards next year and limiting how much that gap increases and limiting it to about $1 million so that we have $6 million or less to close next year, we feel that over this year and next year, we'll be able to reduce that budget gap to a manageable level that we've been able to manage through normal fiscal responsibility that we've demonstrated over years past. As the board has started conversations, and there will be more conversations yet today in the agenda and in future board meetings about looking at the revenue side of the equation. Again, that is a year-long process, and so those conversations, while happening on a fairly routine basis now, I want to assure that the public that conversation has to happen in these board meetings in order to have the board have that conversation. But until there's an actual action item and until there's an actual motion and a vote, nothing is guaranteed to anyone. So as we look to our budget process, we are going to stick in those first two buckets. As I have already mentioned in the staffing plan, so I won't spend much time on here, we are looking at having those staffing meetings. If there are displaced individuals, we are looking at how we can have those individuals fill vacancies that would need to be filled using our established process of internal postings and interviewing process. Avoiding at all costs, but cannot eliminate the possibility of having to do a reduction in force. But if that were the case, we are putting that last on the list and would probably be doing that late in May or early June at the end of the school year. As we talk about those federal funds, we have been one of those districts that have been very upfront in not supplementing our budget with those federal funds because we don't want to give the appearance that things are all well and good. Lots of districts, I shouldn't say lots of districts, some districts have taken that path, only to forsake a conversation in 2024 when those funds are expended and no longer available, that there is a fiscal cliff that districts who are doing that may have to face. Instead, we have been due diligent in using those ESSER funds to address needs within our district. At the last time I presented, there was a question about breaking out those ESSER funds into a little bit more granularity around PD and community partnerships, and a future presentation about the return on investment. And I'll be upfront that return on investment, depending on what we're looking at, may be measured in months and years as opposed to weeks and months. However, in the area of PD, what we've allocated ESSER funds to thus far in our literacy programming with the American Reading Company, we have prepaid for all of our professional learning, and we have broken those strands up so that there is a strand for principals and district leaders around when they go into classrooms, what does good literacy look like, and what are the look-fors, so that helps with the EE process and that evaluation and feedback. A strand for literacy coaches in specific, how to build capacity with them, both in monolingual and dual language, so that when they are working directly with teachers, they can help build capacity within the teachers working directly with the students. And then, certainly not least, the teachers getting those PD sessions that onboard them to the resources, onboard them to the data dashboards, and so forth. ABLE, which is an acronym that's escaping me, so I apologize, is an organization that focuses in on analysis of master scheduling at secondary level. So I put a little graphic that kind of shows a track that the high school has been on this year. So working with ABLE and the high school, they've been through a process thus far where they are rounding, starting at the top and moving clockwise. They are swinging through the last part on the upswing, coming back to the top, where they've looked at transcripts of students, historical and present, looking for gaps, looking for opportunities in which students are not wanting to take courses, but perhaps are locked out of courses, not because of overt actions, but because of unintended consequences of things like prerequisites or scheduling and so forth. That leads into master scheduling and course selection. So students have been course selecting the previous month, and now they are in the process of building master schedules. So the work that ABLE's been doing is working with the high school team to make visible that which was invisible and try to open up opportunities for students to take more courses, especially in conjunction with our academy model. So they've been in that process this year, and we are going to be evaluating at the end of this year compared to last year how many course requests were filled versus how many conflicts. So that would be an ROI that will come sooner rather than later. And certainly last but not least, at the intermediate level, we've been working with a group called Instruction Partners. This is a group that DPI has been working with statewide for a number of years. And we've been fortunate enough that this is an organization that typically does not work with school districts, but in the work that we are trying to do, they are partnering with us. So we've been doing instructional walks at the intermediate level, focusing in on math and ELA specifically with our Springboard curricular resources. And in those instructional rounds, been asking questions of teachers and students and building out stronger pedagogy. Again, looking at gap analysis and the focus on building capacity. On the community partner side, we've invested in 4 community partners thus far. 608 Kids, which is a collaboration between Rising Queens and Filling the Void. They're working both outside at their location on Park Street as well as in the high school itself in mentoring, after-school homework help, social-emotional learning, and just general, another adult voice, caring voice to ask questions of. The Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA have both had long histories with the school district in mentoring and before and after school help. And so we were fortunate enough to use some of those funds to help build out those programs and bring those programs to more students and families. And last but not least, a new group that's to our area, it's called E3 or INKI. They are focused solely on family engagement, and they're doing a pilot project at Fruzen with 10 families. It is a 15-month commitment, and the focus is on helping the student through helping the family unit. It's innovative, it's something new, and so we were fortunate enough to, through that pilot, give this a shot and see how that's going to work out through this spring semester and through the summer. All of these community partners went through a review process in which Mark Perry and myself reviewed all of these proposals. They did these presentations in front of administrators and district leaders to vet and ask and answer questions. And so these are the 4 that we've done thus far through that process with our ESSER funds. And certainly last but not least, we had a presentation which will be talked about at the committee reports about summer school. We did our board presentation. We're looking for launching registration on April 20th. At all levels, we'll have 2 3-week sessions starting on June 21st, ending July 29th. And on the strategic planning side, we have set the dates for the design team. Those 4 dates are April 25th, May 16th, June 6th, and June 20th. Within the May 16th and June 6th, and June 6th and June 20th, there will be strategic writing teams that will be building this out. The goal being that June 21st and in July, the board will be able to see the draft strategic plan, ask questions, review, refine, and then ultimately approve in July based on the board's initial timeline. And with that, I'll open up for questions, comments.
Thank you so much for your report, Dr. Kieser. Do any board members have questions, thoughts, or comments at this time?
All right.
All right, sounds good. Very thorough presentation, and we definitely appreciate all that wonderful information. I'm really excited to hear about the family engagement piece, especially. That's awesome stuff. So that takes us to agenda category 4, committee and other board reports. Is there a committee report this evening for Business Operations and Finance Committee?
I have nothing new to report.
All right, thank you very much. Teaching, Learning, Equity, and Pupil Services Committee, do you have a report tonight?
Yes. I'm also take a liberty here. So the Teaching, Learning, Equity, and Pupil Service Committee, we did meet this afternoon at 5:30. We had a preview of the 2022 summer school program, and we had our second hearing of the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, between the School District of Beloit and the City of Beloit for our SRO program. We had a presentation that addressed the questions that we had in the first committee meeting, and then we did pass it out of committee. I do want to thank the students for your participation tonight. I'm a Purple Knight from 1995. 1995. I first came to a school board meeting in 94. And over at the old Roosevelt Center, the Colac Center, I said, hey, we need to hire more black teachers. We have an increasing Hispanic population, and we need to hire more Hispanic teachers. I'm a parent. I've got 2 children, a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old. And I'm an educational professional. I've been in education for 23 years. I've been a high school principal, an assistant principal, a social studies teacher. I have worked in Beloit. I've been a parent and a committee and community member sitting on that side saying, what are these people up here going to do? Now, as a professional, I have seen some people who sat here try to micromanage the district. And those people have tried to do the job that your principals and teachers are supposed to do. So sometimes I think it is difficult for community members to understand what are we doing or not doing when they are used to certain people trying to do everybody else's job. One of the things that we do as board members is we try to have a regular and orderly process, which is how we've handled our SRO MOU, is that things come up in our committee. We hear them for the first time as information. It comes up a second time, and then it moves by consent agenda to the full board. And then tonight, as we've had this conversation, any board member can bring that off and we'll talk about it. In that committee, some things to think about, just as go back to reflect on our committee report, is that I made note of our new police chief. I made note of our new superintendent, because I have had concerns, and some of the concerns I raise are, what are the school district's practices in the MOU? How have we, since I'm a school board member, I'm responsible for the actions of our superintendent and our administrators, how have we administered things? Because I have worked in this district before, and I know some things that did and did not happen, and I've watched other community members serve on this board, and I was not happy with their performance either. And so that's the great thing about Beloit, is you have the opportunity to participate, you're invited into the conversations, but we are a community. And so one of the things is also sitting here as one of 7 people, a lot of things that you think an individual can do, they're group decisions that have to happen, and other people have to perform roles. And we're trying to give space for our professionals to do their jobs, and we're not always trying to be in front of them. So when there's that gap in community expectation and role performance, we're thankful for the critical feedback so that we can meet that need, and then we respond. And that was our report.
Thank you very much. Next is Governance Committee. We have no report at this time. We were planning to meet Tuesday the 22nd, but I was just made aware today that there may be a conflict for some board members, so that might be rescheduled, so we'll have to see. So stay tuned on Governance Committee meeting. Next, if we haven't, it looks like we have tonight a legislative update and policy. Go ahead, Board Member and Chair Levy.
Thank you. My legislative update is attached. In the interest of time, I will just allow those that are interested to click on that and review. It's kind of long because there are a lot of things in committee on the Assembly and Senate side, but I did want to be thorough. There are currently no scheduled meetings posted for the next 30 days for either the Assembly or Senate side with respect to the education committees. And my policy update was given at our last full board meeting.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That takes us to section 5 of the agenda, which is the action/discussion items. The very first item, 5A, up for discussion is a resolution authorizing the redemption of general obligation refunding bonds. And I'm going to just hand it over to Dr. Keyser to get us all up to speed. Got a captive audience, so maybe we can bring everybody in.
Okay.
Thanks.
So, and then Lisa's unable to be with us, but her colleague Tim is joining us virtually, and he'll be able to walk us through and answer any questions. But just to kind of bring everyone who wasn't at the last board meeting up to speed, we have an opportunity, and through our actions, or the board's actions, establishing the budget and setting the mill rate, we've already levied the funds to pay this debt off. And the debt payoff call date is at on April 1st. So if we are approve a resolution before the board tonight, we'd be able to pay off a portion of our debt from our last our last referendum and save the district approximately $455,000 in interest costs over what would have been the remaining pieces. Tim, how did I do in summarizing?
I think that's a spectacular summarization of the debt prepayment.
All right. What will you add to that before we open it up for questions?
I think you just about covered it. I think the board has done a good job of planning ahead and taking advantage of the opportunity of the current call date to prepay this debt. I think that's really good interest savings through the board's management, and congratulations on the pre-planning, and if the resolution is approved tonight, recognizing those interest cost savings for your taxpayers.
All right. So before the board is a resolution. This has to be done through resolution, and so we've worked and have attached the general obligation bond resolution and made the recommended action motion within the board report.
Perfect. So before we entertain any recommended action, do any board members have any comments or questions on the subject of the resolution? Okay. So in the interest of, I guess, saving our taxpayers almost $500,000, would anybody like to move approval of Resolution 21-22.03, authorizing the redemption of general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2012B, dated September 17, 2012?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Anderson, second by Schneider. Okay. All right. Is there any discussion of the motion on the table at this time? Hearing none, may we please have a roll call vote, Ms. Schopp?
Anderson.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Semrau.
Aye.
Sean Levy.
Aye.
Amy Levy.
Aye.
Greg Schneider.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you very much. And we'll reflect that we do have one board member absent. That's great. Okay, so I think that concludes item 5A. I want to take the time to thank Dr. Kieser and your staff and, of course, our wonderful consultants for helping guide us through making as fiscally responsible decisions as we are able to. And thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Outstanding. That takes us to item 5B, update to district mitigation strategies. Dr. Kieser.
Thank you, Board President Miller. I am loading up the second half of my update here. So, part 2, Superintendent CDC update. So, as we had talked about, we established updated guidance from the CDC, which really talks about areas that are in low and medium community levels of spread no longer need to mask, i.e. go into mask optional. Also, schools are no longer separated out from general CDC guidance, so therefore CDC guidance for communities falls also within the schools. It also clarifies that the TSA mask mandate for public trans does not apply to public or private schools, meaning school buses that are operated by school districts or contracted by school districts are different than city buses. And so what you may have to do on a city bus, you do not necessarily have to do on a school bus. School buses follow what school district guidance is. So that being said, back a year ago, we established a process in which we would maintain a district dashboard, which we will continue. We will follow the state statutes in regards to working with our county health department and adjusting expectations based on changing guidance. What was the issue at the time when the CDC updated? The CDC created its own maps. Its own maps look at everything at a national level. In order to get all that data, they have to ask all the states for their data. and the states will bundle all of their data up and then send it to the CDC. To avoid complication, confusion, and changing dynamics in looking at data, I decided a year ago that we would only use the Department of Health Services, or the DHS maps, which focus in on the data coming directly from our local health departments and our hospitals. It also allows you to zoom in and look at Rock County and school districts proper, so we can actually get really detailed data. So as we worked through the process, over the last time that I talked about this, I've met with the union, I've met with principal advisory team. We collected feedback as promised from stakeholder groups, high school students, parents, community members, staff members, and today we're making our presentation. Here's the summary of that data. We had just under 1,100 responses in English and in Spanish. Roughly 41% of those came from staff members, 30% of those came from parents or guardians, 19.5% came from our high school students, thank you, and the rest were from community members. We asked 3 basic questions. 1, are you aware that the CDC updated its guidance? 92% said yes. Some weren't sure, and some said no. If we were to move to mask optional, would you feel comfortable sending your children to a school? Or as a staff member, would you feel comfortable going to work in a school? 77.3% said yes, 12% said they weren't comfortable, and the rest were unsure exactly how they felt. However, when asked, do you feel that the school district is looking out for the health and safety of its students and staff, 88% said yes. So based on that guidance, moving forward, the school district will move to a mask optional status beginning the morning of Thursday, March 17th, 2022. This will give us the time and the space, and the schools the time and the space to communicate and transition tomorrow. So tomorrow will be the last day that masks will be required in the school district of Beloit. We will continue to use the DHS maps and the district dashboard. If the trend begins to move into the high transmission and is sustained over a period of time, we may have to go back to requiring masks. Masks optional mean that students and staff will have the option to continue to wear a mask if you so choose. And I want to emphasize this point. Individuals, be it students, be it staff members, should not feel pressure to wear or not wear a mask wherever you are. As the comments were stated, there are some people who wear masks in certain spaces and choose not to wear masks in other spaces. But moving forward, that will be a decision that you get to make. Students and staff who are not feeling well still will go to see the school nurse or the health room assistant. They will still be the decision makers in who goes home. With that, if you need to get a test, we will still maintain all of our testing sites, and we have added the rapid testing at our testing sites. So, i.e., if a student needs to get a test and show that they are COVID negative in order to stay in school, we can do those rapid tests now in district at our sites and have an answer within 15 minutes. All other factors, such as cleaning, the availability of masks, our testing sites, as I mentioned with rapid tests, vaccination clinics, and others will continue. Principals and teachers who have asked for the dividers and so forth, if they want those, we have ample supplies of those that people have been asking. In fact, principals have been making staff or asking staff what other things would you want in anticipation of this conversation. So I wanted to just ensure that as we move forward, we did follow our process. while that process worked for us last spring in a much different fashion, it felt slower for some. This outcome is informed, it is measured, and it is taking into account that we're not making knee-jerk reactions, but we are actually being intentional in our actions moving forward so that we can maintain a health and safety environment for our students and our staff moving forward. So with that, if there are any clarifications that board members need, I'm open.
Go ahead, did you? I thought I saw you go. Did you have a comment? Please go ahead.
So, Dr. Keisher, thank you for your report. So the question is, as we're continuing to monitor the data, is there a threshold? Like we might make it all the way through this school year, until something changes. We are how we, like I said, with the plan from the beginning of the school year. And let's say if that takes us all the way through the summer, we get back to the fall school year. I say we get around that December, January issue where it's flu season and everything else. What are the factors that would move something back?
Under current guidance, if we were to move into that high transmission threshold, which is based on the DHS maps, is measured in cases per 100,000. And the threshold would be 100. So currently at the county level, I believe we're in the low 60s or upper 50s. In the school district level data, we are in the 40s. But if that were to creep up and move into higher areas, we would follow a very similar process to what was established in terms of as those things start to move up, we would still engage our principals, our union, our stakeholders and students, parents, families to gauge where they are at. But at this point, if we were to move into high threshold and for a sustained period of time, meaning this data gets updated at 2 p.m. every day, we could be at 101 Wednesday and 74 Thursday. We will have to move to mask optional. So that is the decision, but all of the other factors as far as cleaning and testing sites and all that are not going to change moving forward at this point.
Thank you. One of the things I'd like to say, I appreciate the plan and even for us as a board, our follow through. We're going back to July, I had voted against this part of the plan. And the reason that I voted against this part of the plan is because I believe that elected leaders should make that decision and that we should not have delegated away that authority. But we had a 5-2 vote. I was not on the winning side of that vote. We have gone from July to March. What was based on, it was based on the numbers and the science and our government, other levels of government changing what metrics are. As a school district and a board, even with different board members leaving the board, we followed the plan that we set out. We're at a point now where our superintendent has made a change. And we've had many inquiries and demands of other people to change it, you personally change it. But that's the part of the things that as a school board, we are trying to demonstrate about follow through. And that's not micromanaging the administrator. We took a vote. Everyone didn't get what they wanted in that vote. And then we followed the plan, and now a change has been recommended. And that's what we are doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice President Levy. Any other thoughts, questions? You good?
My comments have been covered.
Your comments have been covered. Excellent. I just wanted to laud you for continuing and expanding our testing accessibility. I know I got a lot of really positive feedback from community members, especially a few weeks ago when Omicron was higher, that they couldn't find testing anywhere but the school district. And so just, I guess, as a community member too, and on behalf of some other people, I want to thank you and your staff. I know that that's a lot of demands on the people who are working in our district to maintain that, and we really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate the comment, and that gives me an opportunity to just also reiterate that our testing sites are open to the family members of our staff and our students. So if your students attend one of our schools and you personally need it, or you're a staff member and your kids need it, you can come to one of our testing sites and be served.
Perfect, thank you. Does anybody else have any thoughts or questions before we move on? All right, well, Dr. Keyser, we certainly appreciate the work you've done to continue to mitigate and manage the ongoing pandemic and keep our staff and students safe. Thank you. Without any further questions or discussion, that takes us to item 5C, which is the discussion of the referendum, the school perceptions community survey. Dr. Keyser, would you like to continue that with us?
Sure. So, in that in the conversation that we've been having along the way with budgeting. So this is the other half of the conversation. When we had the budgeting 101, we had some opportunities that presented itself, and we just took care of one of those, and that was closing out one of our debt obligations. But moving forward, the board was interested in exploring and seeing what would the community's feelings be about the board having these conversations. And in turn, like, what is the community's overall feelings of the district, the work of the board, and continuing that process. So engaging with Rob from School Perceptions, who would be our account manager, he has put forward a proposal for the school board to consider. If the school board is wanting to move forward with this process, I do have a proposal for 2 series of surveys, and here's a draft of what those survey timelines would look like. And we would start that process beginning next week with a 7:30 a.m. Virtual call, which I will invite some of the board members to participate in it. The first survey is a general community strategic planning survey. It would start, again, right away with us doing some work with bringing forward on April 5th a initial draft of a community survey. If approved on the 5th or no later than the 19th, a survey could go out to our community. It would be mailed out, and they take care of all of the mailing. They work with companies to get all that out. With a closed window of about Memorial Day, May 27th, and having initial data back to the board in late May, early June. And then final results in a presentation at the late June board meeting. This survey would give the board an insight as to where the community's feelings are in regards to any type of conversation around referendums, and then inform the decisions of the board moving forward. If that decision was to continue to explore, then the board would do work over the summer, going into the fall, and then along with the master facility plan work, along with that community survey, along with the strategic planning work, the board could then entertain a conversation about putting together a potential referendum question. That potential referendum question would then be surveyed back to the community with feedback, ultimately to inform the board with the idea of having a referendum question in the April 23 timeframe. That second survey would start to work in August, be sent out in October, with information and a presentation back in late November, December, in time for the board in late December, early January to make a decision to go or no go on a potential referendum question, with the guise of April 2023 as being that timeline. Again, this is an aggressive timeline. The board has many opportunities to talk about is April 2023 a timeline you want to stick with? Do you want to push it out? And then also informing the board, being informed by the first survey, and then if moved into the second survey, what the second survey would say. So with that, I open it up for conversations and discussions. All I need to move forward is if the board wants to engage in the survey process, I would contact Rob tomorrow and get the proposal approved. This is built into the budget, so the budgeting cost is roughly about $8,000 to $10,000 per survey, depending on printing costs and so forth. So I'm going to estimate on the high side that these two surveys in total would cost roughly $20,000 to inform the board whether or not to continue down this road, and ultimately, if continuing all the way to the deadline, making a final decision on whether to move forward or not move forward with a referendum question for a year from now.
Thank you. Do board members have thoughts or questions, feedback at this time? Go ahead.
All right. So just as an explanation, because I know we have students who might not have been following all the issues, one of the reasons that as a board we're considering this is because we have a $10.5 million deficit in our budget this year. Next year projected to be 12 and about 14 after that.
Correct. If we don't do anything, 12 and 14.
So one of the other decisions that you have to make when you're elected official is about how are we going to fund and provide an education for the students in Beloit. And so at this point in time, this is some of the foundational work that we have to do. As we've already received many presentations and the financials have been laid out before us, I think that we need to move forward with this process so that we can adequately survey the community to see what their tolerance is, what their feelings are about it, and then that'll inform the steps that we take afterward.
Thank you for those comments. I'll just build on that, I mean, financing education for students in the community is a very high stakes piece. And so I think my opinion would be that it would be important to invest the proper time in research to make sure that we're adequately planned and prepared to offer our kids what we need to offer them. So does anybody have thoughts to the contrary of moving forward with this? And then, go ahead. Yeah.
It's just more of a question to make sure that it's clarified for everyone. So if we go through with the survey and they come back positive, just want to make sure, because some people may think that, well, if it comes back positive, we're going to stop doing our budget control measures. So if they come back positive, are we going to stop our budget control measures? I'm assuming not.
Great question. No, we would not stop that. So taking this to following that positive vibe and taking it to its logical conclusion, if there was a referendum question in April 2023 that included operations, those funds would not be realized until the 23-24 school year. So that we still have this year and all of next year to be mindful of our expenditures. And even if the referendum, which would had operations and it was approved, we would still need to be mindful of that, because being fiscally responsible isn't a part-time thing, it's an everyday thing. So
great, because I know some people there might say, oh, well, you're going to get more money now, you can just stop doing those budget cuts, or they're trying to kind of trim off what we don't need. But I mean, as I keep bringing up in the budget operations and finance committee meeting, is talking about bond scores and making sure that as long as we keep reducing that deficit that we have, we'll have less of an impact on our bond rating, which is pretty much a credit score for the school district. So, thank you.
no problem.
Oh, I was just going to say, I appreciate you bringing that up. It's an excellent point, because, we have to think a couple of years down. Any other questions, clarifications, or thoughts? I'm going to just double check. Are we at consensus that we would like Dr. Keyser to continue to move forward with the surveys at this time? Excellent. Okay. Dr. Keyser, do you need to know at this time which board members might be interested in that discussion, or is that something we can figure out later?
We can figure that out.
Perfect. Okay. So I believe that by consensus, that concludes item 5C, which was just sort of to take the temperature on whether we want to move forward with getting information about discussing the referendum. So that would bring us next to the consent agenda. Items that are listed on the consent agenda may be pulled off and discussed individually, or they may be approved as a whole. So I would just like to ask at this time, would any board member like an item pulled from the consent agenda for individual discussion?
I'd like to pull item A, please.
Perfect, thank you. We have item A out of the consent agenda, item 6A. Any other items? Okay, so it sounds like outside of item 6A, which will be pulled from the consent agenda, everybody's okay with items B, C, D, E, and F. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Semrau, second by Schneider, to approve the consent agenda, which currently consists of items 6B through 6F. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0, and that takes us to item 6A, which is the discussion of the MOU, or Memorandum of Understanding, between the School District of Beloit and the City of Beloit for the School Resource Officers Program. So let me just get all the way clicked on there. And Dr. Keyser, do you want to start us off?
So we've brought, the Memorandum of Understanding has been worked on by a team from the district and the city, and as part of the programmatic review, whenever we have contracts or MOUs that are being renewed, we want to make sure that we do a programmatic review. I'll let Ms. Beavers talk a little bit more in summary of what was covered in our past two committee meetings. Some of the questions that were raised at the committee meetings, and then how we've adjusted the language thus far. I would say, from my perspective in opening comments, this MOU really is one that looks at a partnership with some metrics and some structure in place where the school district and the City of Beloit and Beloit Police Department are not looking at these in silos and evaluating how that partnership's working, but actually coming together as a team and then all just having that conversation. It also provides flexibility so that there is the opportunity as needs and budgets can sustain and staffing can sustain. We can flex within this MOU. And then there's also the opportunity and the desire for building a capacity within that SRO specialized training, not just to the individuals that work within our buildings, but then bringing that broader. So, Ms. Beavers, tell me what you'd like me to present, if anything, and
I don't necessarily need you to present anything. Would you like me to give just a brief overview of the work
Sure.
we've done?
Sure.
So we've been working in collaboration with the Beloit Police Department, Sergeant Linder and Lieutenant Elrod, myself, and Mr. Turner here, Safety and Security Coordinator, for a couple of months now, meeting consistently, gathering feedback on the program and looking at the historical MOU, making recommended revisions for the new MOU with the feedback that we've gotten. Just went over a history of the program, the goals and the mission of the program, and then, like I said, the recommendations for revisions to the current MOU. Dr. Keyser, you summed up a lot of the things we discussed tonight very well, so I'm happy to take any questions.
I was going to say, being that it passed in committee, this is the first time coming to the full board, I think it would be beneficial for you to go to the slideshow to explain the questions you took from the committee and what your answers were.
Thank you for that. While we're queuing that up, do board members have specific questions that maybe we can address? Go ahead, Board Member
I guess
Schneider.
It's really more of a comment. I know we hear a lot about that we should have just signed to continue the current contract, but the contract that just finished actually ended, and there was no mechanism to just automatically renew that. So we had to go through the entire process of generating a new memorandum of understanding. And that's what the board has done, which has taken time to do it, and is now in front of us tonight. But there was no mechanism to just automatically renew the old one. So.
Thank you for those comments, Board Member Schneider. Any other specific questions? Go ahead.
I have a short list of questions and comments and clarification, so I am perfectly fine with going last if others have comments that.
Thank you, Board Member Levy. Do any other board members have specific questions for Ms. Beavers at this time? All right, go ahead, Board Member Levy.
Thank you. And I'll just throw out the questions, comments, and clarifications, and anyone can, whoever has the information, please share. So starting on page 2 with the purpose, which I think is really great that it explicitly says to ensure shared understanding of SRO goals between law enforcement, school officials, and the community. So my question is, through what mechanism are we making sure that we're ensuring shared understanding of SRO goals?
So in the old MOU, there wasn't very clear language. We discussed this tonight in the committee. It was actually brought up in the February committee as a concern, so we addressed it tonight. There was not clear language on how that collaboration looked in the school buildings. Historically, we've done a collaborative meeting between the SROs and the administration at the beginning of the year, but that was surface level, and we've included language now to get into working directly with the staff so they clearly understand the delineation of roles of the administrator in their building and the SRO in their building. Do you guys want to add anything? No? Okay.
So I guess just to clarify with my question, and I think that this is great that it's embedded in the MOU, and I think it's critically important to have those shared goals, but it specifically says between law enforcement and school officials, which it sounds like we have handled, but it also lists the community. So are there plans of making sure that we loop in the community and tell them about all of the great things that the SROs are doing in our building and how we're being intentional about partnership and, like you said, role clarity, et cetera? Since community is captured in the MOU, I just want to make sure that we're adhering to the document.
I don't know that we have specific plans delineated to do that at this point in time, but it's certainly something that we can discuss moving forward.
Okay, I would hope so because it is included in the MOU. Next on page 2, under terms and terminations, B, shall possess knowledge of BOE, Board of Education policies, and that's for the SROs. As the current chair of the policy committee, I would love to assist if that is necessary, but do we have a current mechanism, since it's stated in the MOU that our SROs will be familiar with board policy? What mechanism are we using to make sure that that happens?
I don't believe I don't know that there's a mechanism in place. They have access to all school board policies.
Yeah, so our mechanism for all of our administrators and staff is now that we've digitized all of our school board policies within board docs, everyone, including our SROs, have access now to the policy documents. And so it's an expectation it's an expectation of district staff and administrators that they need to make themselves aware of that. And so we're clarifying that within the MOU that the SROs should have access and they should also review those as well.
And the code of conduct is reviewed at the beginning of every year for sure.
Right, I was specifically addressing policy. Thank you, Dr. Keiser, for providing that clarity. Next on my list, goals, objectives, and responsibilities. SROs shall not be required to intervene in classroom management. So I would love to ask one of our SROs, like, how are we as a school district doing with that? Is your experience of being an SRO in our buildings that you are not being asked to intervene in classroom management issues? Anyone?
Since I'm the most senior, I see the young bucks looking at me, so I guess I get volunteered there. Yes, ma'am. I can speak particularly over to the program over at Fruzen and Aldrich. We have like a HIT team, so we have staff, advisors, social workers, and so forth that all respond to the classroom to assist that particular teacher and that kiddo who's having a rough time.
Perfect. Thank you so much, sir. Next, goals of page 4, goals, objectives, and responsibilities, which you alluded to earlier, Ms. Beavers. Thank you in advance. The student code of conduct shall be reviewed annually by the Beloit Police Department and school administration. Is there a specific time or of the year or a specific meeting or where that happens? Do we have that scheduled or is that in the works?
Sergeant Linder and I meet at the start of every school year. For the past 2 years that I've been in this position, Sergeant Linder and I meet in August prior to Administrative Academy.
Okay, so that doesn't include all of our SOROs. That's a 2-person meeting?
Yep.
Sorry, Jamie Linder, City of Beloit Police Department Sergeant. We've done some collaboration at the beginning of the last couple school years. COVID obviously put a little hitch in our giddy up. But typically what we do is Ms. Beavers and I have met. We've made sure to collaborate so that if there's been any changes to anything that we need to know about that happened through your entity, that we're aware of it. And then we've connected with our principal levels of all the schools where we have SROs so that we can go over, these are the starred things that you need to connect with your SRO on. These are the things your SRO needs to know about. These are the things that aren't quite an SRO related function, but please always make sure that you can connect and you can collaborate with your SRO and they can tell you this isn't an us function. So we do have not just Ms. Beavers and I meeting, but we are taking it to the next level to make sure that we're at least plugging in our principals so they can do a pass down of information to their staff.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification. So good to hear that that information is being disseminated and not remaining with the two of you. So that is good to hear. Next on my list, page 7, work days and duty hours, section F. And I'm paraphrasing. It says, if SROs or additional police officers work overtime, the district agrees to pay time and a half, which absolutely makes sense. Now, my question is, it also states, and again, I'm paraphrasing, if an SRO is called away for an emergency or to provide assistance from the district during normal work hours, that will not decrease kind of like the bill that the district owes. So I am just curious, why does it work one way, which I'm totally supportive, if you're working overtime, time and a half is completely reasonable, but why does it not work in reverse?
It's you.
The time and a half that's listed in there is for special events. So if the school district requested that there were law enforcement at a basketball game, at a swim meet, at a school dance, at a play, etc., that is paid out as a special event. Our overtime related to our calls for service, because our SROs often work far more than their 8-hour day, or they have to come in early for an administrative meeting, things of that nature. When we're talking about the extension of a shift based on an investigation or based upon their report writing, which they do many hours later at night, that's paid for by the city at their time and a half, which is mirroring their union contract. So I'm sorry if that wasn't clear language, and maybe that's something we have to...
No, that makes sense. In the MOU, it seems as though the district covers all of those costs, which would make sense to me if you are working overtime because of responding to a district-related issue. So like you said, the reporting, it even mentions specifically if you go to court for an investigation that's school district related, that the district picks up that cost, which, just to be clear, that makes sense to me. But it also says if an SRO is pulled away for an emergency or to provide assistance, that amount that the district owes for services that are being rendered, it can increase, but it won't decrease if we're not receiving that full 8-hour day. Does that make sense?
I hear what you're saying. I think we're on different tracks of understanding with it. Yes, an SRO might have to, let's say we have an SRO who's on our SWAT team or our tactical operations team. If there's a deployment where we have to go and put that officer there, we have to deploy them there because it's the need for their resource, and we wouldn't pull back the pay to the school district. But I think that's where the balance becomes for the times where they are working more time on behalf of the school district for report writing or detailed investigations. The city takes the responsibility for that payment as a hope that that would provide a balance so that there's not a back and forth of funds moving to try and keep track of specifics.
No, that makes sense. And if we could clarify that in the MOU, because as it currently states, it says that the district pays for those additional things. So thank you for providing that clarity that the city is picking up a portion of that bill. And then, like you said, I could see that as being a wash or a balance.
And that you said page 7?
Absolutely. It is
Subsection
page 7, and it's work days and duty hours, and it's section F.
Thank you. I'll note that for me.
No problem at all. Next, with training, the school district shall require the building principals in which SROs are assigned or their designees to receive training regarding working with SROs, which I think is amazing, especially when we talk about role clarification. So I just want to confirm, is that currently happening, and how is that going?
That's what Sergeant Linder was referring to earlier when we meet, and then we meet with the building principals at the beginning of the school year. We do an annual training of what's the role of an SRO and how to work with them in your building.
But moving forward, you're talking about bringing that to the staff now.
Correct.
So they're expanding that, so it's bringing it now, so it's no longer just with the principals, and to your earlier comment, not just staying there, but now bringing it and saying to the staff, this is the role of an SRO in relation to dealing with disciplinary issues. This is who you call. As you had heard, in buildings, they have teams that should respond and not call the SRO because they didn't like what the principal did in handling the referral.
Perfect. I'm excited to see that rollout take place. Next is actually found on page 8, activities report / program evaluation, section A, with the quarterly reports. One, I'm excited that these are happening and that these are available for district staff on an as-needed basis. So just thank you for that. My question is, are the incidents included in the report disaggregated by racial and ethnic identity and also gender identity? And the reason that I specifically asked that question is that if we look at our district's out-of-school suspension rate and we disaggregate that by racial and ethnic identity, we can see glaring disparities, and then we can act on those disparities to mitigate and ultimately eliminate them. So that's the reason for asking, are those reports that I'm glad exist, are the incidents in those broke down, again, by racial and ethnic identity and also gender identification?
Yes, both. And they very much mirror our discipline data for the district.
Okay, so for another day, I would love to hear what we're doing to mitigate and eliminate those disparities. But again, for another day. 2 more things. On page 8, activities report / program evaluation, section B, it mentions or alludes to SRO goals for the upcoming year, which I think is fantastic to be reflective of the year that was and to set those goals for the upcoming year. But who is involved in that SRO goal setting, because that wasn't very clear in the MOU?
That would be the collaborative team that we've been working with here, the city and the district. So right now it's Mr. Turner, the coordinator of safety and security, myself, Sergeant Linder, and Lieutenant Elrod.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then my final question is actually found on page 12 with amendments. And I think we did a really nice job of saying, when it renews, it always happens on August 1st. If one or both parties want to terminate the contract, you need to respond by June 1st prior to that August 1st. But when it comes to amendments, they can be offered by either party in writing, but they have to be mutually agreed to. But there's no timeline. So for example, if the police department wanted to offer an amendment, they would provide that in writing to the school district, but there's no language about the school district has 30 days to respond or 70, some time frame to respond, so that we can come to that mutual agreement. So if we could be clear on what that timeline with respect to amendments from either party looks like, I think that would be helpful. And again, thank you for entertaining all of my questions and comments, and thank you to everyone who worked on the team to update this MOU and get it ready to come before the board.
Thank you, everybody. Great points raised. Any other thoughts or questions at this time? I will just like to say I'm really encouraged by the increased collaboration between the district and the city. Our youth belongs to the entire city, and I'm very pleased to see the growth that's been reflected in this new MOU, and I think it's a good sign of things to come. And definitely want to echo my colleagues in thanking everybody involved for all of your time, thoughtfulness, and energy that went into this. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, another thing I'll add, since it came out of committee, and like Board Member Schneider said, we were at the end of the last MOU. And as you can see, Board Member Levy is a reader. And we as a composed board, we are not just a approve the last contract type of board. That's not how we have operated. We're intentional in the things that we are doing because there are questions that do need to be asked. In the committee, what I brought up was the concern of past practices in terms of have all the things that are written in the MOU actually happen, and what has been the administrative part on the school district. In the first presentation, the district was responsive, and there are some items that were clarified as this was brought back. And as we described it, this is our normal process. If you listen to all the meetings that we have had, we've described how things will go to committee and then come to the full board. So that is a process that we are working through and where we are at.
Thank you for those clarifying comments. I think it's really helpful so people understand. Go ahead.
I want to add another one too. So as a public educator of 23 years, I have worked shoulder to shoulder with law enforcement officers and other people. In a high school, particularly at that level, and when you're in charge of 1,000, 1,700, 1,500 people, human beings do all kinds of things that are unexpected. Most days in schools, very easy. We enjoy, laugh, and have great days with kids. And then there are days, like what happened in our parking lot, where real police work is done and decisions that administrators have to make. It's a totally different situation. Working with that many human beings is often traumatic in the things that you're required to respond to. So we do thank you for your work, and that understanding is in a community like Beloit, to pretend that a conversation about education has nothing to do with race, and to pretend that a conversation about policing has nothing to do with race. That is ridiculous. As was mentioned, it's not always that somebody is trying to do something harmful to someone. But when we look at our discipline data in our district, and as you said, it mirrors that law enforcement factor, that we're trying to have better outcomes for all people. We're trying to keep people safe. And as a board, our responsibility is what are our administrators doing? So the questions that we have asked and pressed are to ensure that the people that we are responsible for, and as we use this resource, that all those things are taken into consideration. Because those are the unsaid things that are actually operating when you are trying to do a policing job and people are trying to educate students.
Thank you for your comments, Vice President Levy. Any other thoughts or comments before we take action on this item? Okay, so the next step would be to ask if there is anybody who would like to make a motion to approve the MOU between the School District of Beloit and the City of Beloit for the School Resource Officer or SRO program. Would anybody like to make this motion?
So moved with the clarifications identified in the discussion.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Levy, second by Semrau. Any other discussion at this time? All right. Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 I gotcha. Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously, 6-0. Thank you so much, everybody, and thanks for your attendance this evening. We appreciate it. All right. No, you're fine. Yay.
Nice job.
All right. It's definitely a lot of celebration this evening, which is always a good thing. All right, so that takes us through item 6, the consent agenda, and takes us to our meeting closing, which is agenda section 7. So before we adjourn, I'll just let everybody know when our future board meeting dates are going to be. So at the moment, there is a governance committee meeting scheduled for Tuesday, March 22nd at 6 p.m. I'm just going to throw out there that there is potentially we were just informed today that there might be a student-led listening session for candidates, and so we might want to revisit that date. So I'm going to say that most likely we will be postponing the governance committee so that we can meet with our students. But we'll see how that goes. So business operations and finance will then meet Tuesday, April 5th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. Next, we have the Human Resource Committee, which is the committee of the whole board, and that meets Tuesday, April 5th at 6:30 p.m. The next regular board meeting is Tuesday, April 5th at 7 p.m. The Policy Committee then will meet Wednesday, April 6th at 5:30 p.m. Teaching, Learning, Equity, and Pupil Services Committee will be Tuesday, April 19th at 5:30 p.m. Human Resource Committee, which is a committee of the full board, then will meet Tuesday, April 19th at 6:30 p.m., followed by our regular board meeting, which is Tuesday, April 19th at 7 p.m. And I will just kind of add, I believe we do have a workshop for a new school board member onboarding scheduled on Tuesday. I believe it's April 13th, tentatively scheduled with Mr. Howick. I didn't think to add that, so I'll just announce it for everybody and we'll include it for the next time we meet. But we do have an election on April 5th. If there will at least be one new board member seated at that time. So whoever is joining the board is invited to attend that board workshop, which will be, I believe, the 13th. I don't think we've established a time yet. It'll probably be like 6. So we'll get that updated for next time. All right, anything else I missed or needs to be edited for future board meeting dates? Okie dokie. So with that said, would anybody like to move to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Levy, second by Schneider. Any discussion? I'll just thank everybody very much for their great work tonight and for everybody's comments this evening. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, have a great night. Thank you.